Anthony, thanks for joining us here. Appreciate you coming on. Just talk a little bit about APT, what you guys are doing.
Eric, thanks an awful lot. Appreciate you having me. What we're doing is we're trying to help organizations get better at data-driven decision making. And we have a philosophy about this, which is the best way to use data to understand how to manage a business is to innovate, to try new ideas in some stores, not others, with some customers, not others, some employees, not others, and figure out, did it work?
So obviously a lot of your customers are retail, consumer-facing kind of brands. I know you've got an example that you mentioned to me earlier about Wawa, which is a big, little food convenience chain here on the East Coast.
One.
So just kind of walk us through what you guys did for them as their consultant, with them being your clients.
Yeah, so we have good fortune of working with a number of leading retailers, as well as consumer products companies and restaurants and hotels and travel organizations. Wawa is a very exciting one. What's often real fun about trying new ideas is learning something different than you initially anticipated. And in their case, they were launching a flatbread sandwich. And there's a fair amount of excitement about this. Some research said consumers liked it, and if you looked just at the sales, it was selling pretty well.
Was you guys telling them, hey, Wawa, you should do a flatbread, or they were always coming up with things to experiment? Like, where does the original idea come from?
That's a great question. So essentially, ideas come from everywhere. And less often, and our role as a partner is often not to provide ideas. These ideas are coming from our clients. They're coming from observations about what's going on in the marketplace. They're sometimes coming from data, in which case you can leverage data to come up with new ideas. But this one was just an idea that the team had, that our client had, that Wawa had. And before rolling it out, which is really pretty expensive, they wanted to do is try it first in a subset of locations. And again, you could see the sales, and those were actually pretty promising. But this was about the same time we were working together. And in using big data and using software and using an understanding of trends, it was really valuable to see not just the primary effects, is the sandwich selling, but the secondary effects. Are we selling fewer of other sandwiches? Are we just in fact switching out and replacing some of the pre-made sandwiches with the new sandwiches? And are we selling more chips? Are we selling more soda? And looking at the totality of the patterns of success, discovered that the flatbread sandwich is actually fallen pretty flat. And instead of making this very major investment, wisely we're able to save that and to not do that.
So the idea there, is it's cannibalizing sales? Like, is the flatbread cheaper than what people would have bought anyway? Like, if you have a breakfast item and this, I don't know, I'm just making up numbers.
That's exactly
it. Was $2, but originally they were buying the $4 thing, and so you made it worse for yourselves.
Exactly, and so in fact, you may be just trading off in ways that you don't anticipate. And what you need to do is bring in more customers and have a sort of a broader, bigger, more exciting offering, or find observations where what you've done is having halo effects, not cannibalization effects. Example would be working with one of our convenience retailers who was thinking about adding coolers. So literally like coolers,
just like
putting in coolers
full
like
of drinks,
dairy
and
eggs and cheese and whatnot. And if you looked just at the sales of items in that cooler, you'd say, wow, this just doesn't pay off. I mean, it's really expensive. The coolers, electricity.
It's like it looks bad from a simple data point of view.
But again, looking at the secondary and tertiary effects, they observed, you know what? We're getting a lot more trips. We're actually, while viewed on its own, not enough margin, high costs, in fact, we're getting additional transactions, additional customer engagement. This is a great idea. But actually, like many things, some ideas may be okay on average or good on average, but fantastic in some situations and terrible in others. I often say if we're sitting at room temperature, but my feet are in the freezer and my head's in the oven, that's a very poor description of what.
Right, the average isn't.
And so, if you're right next to a supermarket and you put in the coolers, maybe that's one of the data elements or dimensions that, well, actually, that's a terrible idea, because all I got's the sales from the cheese and the milk and whatnot, and it's certainly not enough. So if we maybe not even much of that.
So let's focus on the Wawa example. So if let's say I'm trying to figure out if I'm you guys or if I'm them, but that situation where you're trying to test and learn, because I know that's your phrase, or you're experimenting. So they roll it out. What's an example? Like people roll it out in 100 locations, in 10 locations. How many do you need to know that you've got enough for your experiment?
Yeah, so there are all sorts of steps to innovating quickly, efficiently, effectively, and the right way. And one of your questions, that question is central, right? If I test it in 5 locations and then I look up and say, well, I don't really know whether or not that
Right.
worked. And I certainly don't want to test it in 200 locations if it's expensive and,
Right.
and complex and operationally disruptive. So that's what part of our platform does. So it asks and answers the question, and it depends on what are you testing, and like how long are you going to test it for, and what are the patterns there? Are you testing an individual SKU, or are you testing a whole category? Is it something that's trying to drive traffic for the entire store? And so that is an answerable question, and what's important is it's answerable in advance. And so best practice organizations routinize this process of innovation by answering how many and then which ones are they representative, and then after the fact, not just saying yes or no, not just saying did it work or not, but more and more often, where did it work? Because in today's world, it's not about one simple answer. It's about understanding the nuances of where can I target this to the locations, to the customers, to the areas where it's going to be effective, and how can I tailor the investment I'm making?
So then, like I'm thinking about, how if I'm a client, I just ask you guys? Do I have, what does this look like? What do you guys do? You guys come in with hard hats and walk around and look at the experiment? Is it they send you memos, they send you a P&L? Like, how do they actually get the information? Like this flatbread, it's bad because who said it was bad? You know what I mean? How does that work?
So the key to leveraging big data is to automate every process, and actually take out of the loop a series of steps which can be time-consuming and almost prohibitive. So what happens is we receive daily feeds of data, dozens, hundreds from each organization that we serve, I think 60,000 plus data feeds, and then complement those data feeds coming from our clients with third-party data that they've licensed around whether it could be weather or demographics or competition. Because you want all of this information at your fingertips immediately. We all have these little devices in our pocket, and we expect immediate answers about the world's knowledge. Organizations should expect the same immediate answers about their data, and so immediately able to ask and answer these questions.
So is there a guy at the client place, or somebody working at Wawa has your software in front of them and they feed it in and they get some answers? What does it look like?
That's exactly right. So the data feeds in to the server, to the solution, and it is leveraged by organizational team members across all our clients that may sit in marketing, they may sit in operations, they may sit in property. What's going to be the effectiveness of our capital investment as we remodel a location? They often will sit in pricing and promotion. And great organizations, what big data enables is lots of little tests. Great organizations are constantly trying to understand what works, what doesn't, what managerial intervention is going to have a positive impact on how to run the business.
So let's look at this flatbread example, right? So could it have been as simple as, all right, if it's cannibalizing sales, just make it more expensive? Like if it's $2 and now they're buying that instead of the $4 thing, should they have just said, it's $5 now, and then whatever you do, we're still making more margin? I mean, are there simple answers like that? Or like, how do you guys decide, nope, we're just going to literally kill this product, it's not worth it?
It's interesting. So about 40% of ideas that are tested as we canvass our user base just fail flat out, and there's kind of no recovery. That doesn't mean 60% work. What that means is that 60%, often through multiple efforts, eventually lead to success. So it may be that there are opportunities that, oh gosh, at a different price point we might be more effective, or if we'd only had more media that supports this. So anytime an organization's trying a new idea, be that product-oriented or market-oriented, often you want to try different versions of it. So you can think of a discount as buy two, get one free,
right,
or 25% off, or if you buy $100, you get an extra $30. Conceptually, you could do some math and say, oh, those are all identical. But different consumers at different times of years in different ways are going to respond. And so in our view, you can't just know that in advance. You have to try it and understand how does your customer respond to this type of offer.
Because like you said, so there's a lot of things you must keep track of. Oh, this store location is next to a supermarket. Maybe this other one is next to a gas station, or this other one is next to a highway and it's all by itself. So like maybe all these things have different data points. And are you collecting all of that and feeding a massive set of numbers to figure out these answers? Is that what this is?
So yes, yes, and yes. In fact, that the more data, the better. And historically, when I started my career, you'd have to sort of ask the questions in advance. What data do you think might be relevant?
Right.
And then go collect it. Like, is it important if we're on a highway or not? And that should just not be a step in today's world, and it doesn't have to be. So our client organizations are leveraging thousands of pieces of information about their locations, their anything that they can find to immediately have an automated asking and answering of the question, is it a highway? Is it density of population? And have the software look and search for patterns of success so that we can then predict and optimize the rollout of any action that we take.
So are there some things that you found through this kind of data analysis work, just general business wisdom, conventional wisdom that people learn in college courses and MBA classes, like traditional 101 type of stuff, that just turns out, you know what, this has just been wrong for 30 years, but we didn't know, we've been doing it wrong the whole time. I mean, you guys must have found something, right?
So it's very interesting and fun when you're working with an organization that has some sacred cow belief about what works. And often that belief is deeply rooted in reality.
Sure we've got plenty in the media industry. Right? There's a lot of things that we do that's how they've always done it.
That's how we do it. That's how it works. This is what our customer and almost every organization has these beliefs. It's often around customer response and what you'd have to do market and trying a new idea in a low cost, low risk way is a great way to ascertain whether it works. Constant example is in media or marketing, different types of media, traditional print. Oh, we can't possibly take away the circular. If we do, and we take away the circular and the discount on milk or whatnot, sales are going to crash. Like, we shouldn't even try.
Oh, like if a grocery store says $1 off on a gallon of milk, and they put that in the little newspaper ads.
And sometimes there's a felt belief that that's so important. We've got to meet our numbers for the next quarter. Well, let's see what happens if we actually don't run the circular in 30 locations for these couple weeks or X locations. That examples I've seen again and again illuminating. Now it's true actually that in some areas the circulars definitely works and it's incredibly powerful, but often it's hasn't been lived up to the learning or the wisdom that might have been 10, 15 or more years old.
Are there other examples like that? So that's a good print. That's a traditional one that there has been so much change in social media and how people get their information. So I can see why, yeah, you did that 30 years ago. You might not need to do that in every location. But are there other examples of that where it's just like, you know what, that's a generation old and we're done with that?
I think there's a lot of themes around general beliefs that if you just get things right once and you execute, you can win. And that's not the world that we're in anymore. Really, you've just got to tailor actions to individual customers, to individual situations. And I think as we work with organizations, there's often this felt belief or desire to have consistency. And there's a lot of teaching around how important a consistency can be around culture and whatnot. But time and again, we find that when you really put a point on where do things work and where do they not, you find that the nuance is well worth the investment to tailor your actions.
What about a lot of these places? Like you think about a Wawa or Starbucks and McDonald's and like all these places that you kind of have a sense for, no matter where you are in the country, they're going to look identical. But like you said, not everything sells the same in every place. So not every way of doing business works in every place. So how can a company, have, let's say, whatever, McDonald's, like any kind of company like that where I expect a certain feel, vibe, look, menu option when I go in there, but maybe what I get in New Jersey is totally different than what they should be selling in New Mexico.
So there are lots of examples of trying to weave this balance. Like, do you want the barbecue sandwich in this location, right, and it perhaps in the south or not the north or whatnot? One of my favorite examples is an organization, fundamentally a grocery store, thinking about selling apparel, selling clothing.
So buying clothes at the
in the grocery store, and
grocery store, yeah.
and there's lots of, and tried it, and basically didn't work too well. But actually, in some locations, it worked really well. In certain areas, given population densities, where you're not near a discount clothier and whatnot, so much so that desire to wow, this is a big opportunity, let's roll it out. And we want to be consistent, though. We had the client wanted to. So in some
Because
locations,
they're either we should just sell clothes
either we're
everywhere
doing it
or
or not.
sell it nowhere. Yeah.
And so in some locations, maybe make it where we know it's going to work, make a big footprint and really invest heavily. In others, we can have a brand consistency in a much sort of smaller part of it, and maybe there's a slightly different kind of mix that's more appealing to a different demographic. So often you can have that feel of consistency with hard charging economics that are tailored to each situation the right way.
So what is the future for this kind of business, this kind of industry? Because it's something that you don't really hear about, right? You hear about the main brands, like you hear about the Wawas of the world and all the big consumer brands like Starbucks, which gets talked about all the time in media. But you don't hear about guys like you that much because you're hiding behind the scenes giving everybody this information. So what is the future for a company like yours, the main companies, where the industry's going? Because I feel like every day we just hear about AI and machine learning and big data and neural nets and deep learning. And does that apply here, or is that different? Is that unrelated to this?
So the use of data for better decision making. This is a powerful trend, and I mean I think you see it in almost every venue. Any leader of any organization needs to stand up, and she needs to say, we are committed to being a data-driven organization, because there's so much power and so much influence that can have in a positive way. Now, the trend is certainly towards more and more effective use of data. There are different elements. And AI, artificial intelligence, it's tremendous in diagnosing opportunity and diagnosing a situation. Actually isn't as good at prescribing. But it is part and
It's like
parcel.
you have a problem, but I don't know what to do about it. I mean, is that basically what it's
So what's
good for?
fantastic? Yeah. So it's sometimes if you know the situation, you know exactly what to do. So if I'm using these complex algorithms and I'm measuring perturbations of physical shaking and other kind of electronic signals, I can see in advance this machine might fail. So there I know what to do.
I know what to do with a
Let's fix the
failing
machine.
machine, yeah.
Let's fix the machine. Or I'm using these complex patterns of understanding of buying. If I'm charging something with a card, I can look at the past merchant patterns and the past card patterns and say, oh, you know what? Through this complex analysis of time and whatnot, that's probably not a legitimate transaction. Okay, well, let's not authorize it.
Right.
Let's not give out the money. It's very clear. There are often other situations where maybe a customer's at risk of attrition. Well, okay, well, what do I?
Oh, does
what
he
do
need a discount?
What do
Does
I
he need
do?
a phone
Or
call?
do I
What do we
celebrate
do?
it as a bad customer? I don't.
Right.
Do I throw a party? Do I give a big discount?
Or do I just let him go? Yeah.
And so, really, the essence of experimentation is intentionally trying different ideas and figuring out which situations do those work. And AI and data analysis, incredibly important part of the process. It finds a slew of potential patterns that might suggest something to do, but ultimately, you really have to try it and see what works.
Interesting. So I like that approach. I mean, it's like big data, good for small experiments in a way. But so then, how do you do bigger experiments? Like, how do you automate the experiments then, right? How do you get the machine to do it all so that in a way, you don't need people like you to tell them how to do it, right?
So actually, we talk about this is something we think about a lot in terms of the future. There's this thought that artificial intelligence will tell the future and it'll know everything. If only, and I remember when I started my career, I just wished if only we had enough data and enough processors, enough algorithms, we could know everything. I don't believe that. We will not know what the price of oil is in 3 months. We will not know what we can learn a lot, but the only way to really know whether something I'm doing is going to work or not is to try it, and it's to intentionally introduce variance. And what we believe is that more and more frequently there'll be more automated approaches to what our clients do in terms of testing new ideas, more on an automated basis, testing new product, testing new pricing, testing new intensity of marketing, and using that truth to understand what works. At the end of the day, one of the most powerful things about test and learn culture and innovation culture is it creates a single view of the truth for an organization as to what works and what doesn't. It gets everybody on the same page. It's not a black box. It's like, no, we tried this with these customers. We tried this in this situation, and here was the impact versus like customers or like locations where we didn't do it.
Do you guys use it on yourselves?
Yeah, so we use it for our own kind of efforts in marketing and response, and more use it across the business that we're a part of.
And then now that you guys are part of MasterCard, does that change what you're able to do? Does it limit what you're able to do because you're not independent anymore? Or does having that bigger parent with so much access actually give you more data perhaps?
Well, it's fantastic to be a part of MasterCard, and it's really been tremendous, particularly so excited about what we do in terms of bringing this capability to organizations, and a lot of dimensions that have been accelerating, but one that's exciting. We sort of fashioned ourselves a global organization because we had offices in Taipei and Tokyo and Sydney and London, and now that we've joined MasterCard, just the scale and the scale, we weren't a global organization at all, and all these trust-based relationships across the globe have really accelerated our ability to deliver what we do more broadly.
So then finally, when they killed that flatbread at Wawa, did they bring anything back? What was the next thing that they tried? Or was that, was that it? Was it just like, okay, we're done, we're going to go back to what we're doing?
Well, you know what a fantastic organization that Wawa is, and they've had lots and lots of innovations and improvements across the business that have led them to fare very well.
All right, well, thanks a lot, Anthony. Appreciate you
Eric,
coming on and
thank you
chatting
so
with
much.
me.
I really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.